When asked why their finances are in bad shape, some people might respond with, "I'm just bad with money." And deep down, they might actually believe this. But while some people will use this to justify overspending and maxing out their credit cards for things they don't need, the honest truth is that many of these individuals are not necessarily bad with money, they just refuse to change, and that's a big difference. Being bad with money is often the scapegoat, and some people make it sound as if it's a personality trait that they can't fix or a special skill that they can't develop. But in reality, managing money is not about talent because no one is born knowing how to do this. And while it's true that some people might have a special knack for numbers, being responsible with money, even if you don't have a lot, isn't beyond your ability. And if you're struggling financially, there is a good chance that you already know what you need to change. The problem is that you don't have an actual plan in place to do this. A lot of people don't need more financial advice, so they don't need another book on how to budget, another podcast on saving money, or another spreadsheet to track their expenses. They already know the basics. But of course, knowing and doing are two completely separate things, and some people stay stuck because they get caught in this loop of complaining with no action, or they might blame their circumstances, such as their low-paying job or the rising cost of living, things that, while real, aren't always insurmountable obstacles. Because for every person struggling financially, there is another person in a very, very similar situation who is figuring it out, or at least they're trying to. So if you find yourself constantly complaining about these things while simultaneously swiping your credit card for things that you don't need, eating out multiple times a week, or saying yes to every invitation, and then having to go through and rearrange your bills to make sure that everything is covered, that's not because you're bad with money. It's because you're avoiding making the changes that could actually improve your situation. And the sad part is that a lot of people would rather be comfortable in their bad habits than uncomfortable making better choices. So it's much easier for them to say, "I'll start saving next month," than to actually start saving today. And it's easier to keep using Afterpay than to wait until they can afford something. In the end, making better financial decisions can often mean doing things that feel inconvenient or restrictive in the short term. And yes, if you've been used to living a certain way for a certain length of time, that change will feel uncomfortable. But here's the thing, avoiding that discomfort is probably what's keeping you broke. And if you want any chance of ever breaking the cycle, the first step is to admit this. Now, this doesn't mean that outside factors don't play a role, because of course they do. Wages, inflation, and unexpected expenses all make an impact. But there is a big difference between recognizing a challenge and using it as an excuse to stay stuck. The most financially successful people aren't necessarily the ones who make the most money. Instead, it's usually the ones who take responsibility for their financial situation no matter what. I mean, if you think about it, most people probably know at least one person who makes a really good income, yet they are terrible when it comes to managing it. So if you think that you're just bad with money, ask yourself, do I actually track where my money goes, or do I just assume I don't have enough? Also, am I making conscious financial decisions, or am I spending on autopilot? Likewise, do I set financial goals, or do I just hope things will work out? And taking accountability is so powerful because it's only after you acknowledge what you're not doing and you own your bad habits that you can start changing them. And some people think that fixing their finances will involve making these major drastic changes overnight, but that's not necessarily true. And it's really about making small, consistent decisions that add up over time. So instead of trying to overhaul everything at once, start with one habit. So you could start by cutting out just one unnecessary expense each week. So let's say you're currently eating out 5 times a week. You could start slow and cut that back to 3 times a week. Even if that move only saves you $40 a week, at the end of the month, that's an extra $160 that you didn't have before. And you can also commit to saving a small percentage of every single check. So if you're paid bi-weekly, you can take $25 off the top and put it into your savings. And these changes aren't huge, but they do build discipline. And in the end, discipline is what's going to improve your finances. Because the bottom line is that if you actually want to see change, you have to start thinking long term and understand that temporary discomfort ultimately leads to results. So there is a good chance that no, you are not bad with money, you just have habits that don't really support financial stability. But the good news is that habits can change, but only if you decide to change them. Because no raise, bonus, or sudden stroke of good fortune is going to put you in a better place financially if you don't first take control of your decisions. And the sooner you stop blaming circumstances and start owning your choices, the sooner you'll see real progress.